Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The first time I saw General Kessler up close, he was standing on a Veterans Day stage, smiling like he hadn't sold souls for profit. Crowds were clapping. Drums thundered. Kids waved flags. And there he was, wore medals pinned to his chest like armor made of lies. I stood near the edge of the barricade, press badge swinging from my neck. I wasn't there to report. I was there to burn the whole stage down. I reached into my coat pocket and wrapped my fingers around the USB drive. My thumb hovered over the remote trigger on my phone. 10 seconds. People would remember this parade, not for the flyovers or the national anthem, but for the voice that spoke from the grave. My father's voice. Colonel James Morgan. Decorated. Respected. Then discarded like a broken weapon when he refused to play along. They called him paranoid. Accused him of treason. Said he tried to sabotage a mission that left Bravo team dead. But I had his journal. And in 9 seconds, the world would hear the truth. I glanced up at the massive LED screen behind the stage. It still showed Kessler's grinning face. My father's ghost was about to replace it. 8 seconds. You ever feel like your bones are vibrating? Like your soul's holding its breath? 7. The last words my father ever wrote weren't for my mom. They weren't for the army. They were for me. If they kill me, Claire, don't cry. Make noise. 6. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. 5. They called him a traitor. 4. His diary called them liars. 3. I hit the button. Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. I hadn't gone into the attic since Mom died. It still smelled like her, cedar wood and old lavender. Dust swirled through shafts of light like silent witnesses. I only went up to grab some photo albums. But when I stepped across the warped floor near the chimney, a board cracked, tilted, and revealed metal. At first, I thought it was a toolbox. Then I saw the initials, JAM. My father's initials. My breath caught. The box was heavy. Locked. Rusted shut. But the hinge snapped with a crowbar and 20 seconds of panic strength. Inside were documents, a folded army flag, 2 cassette tapes, and a leather-bound journal. Worn smooth at the edges. Pages filled with tight handwriting and names I hadn't heard since I was a kid. Names like Kessler, Rivera, Dunn. But it wasn't the journal that made my hands shake. It was the small, labeled envelope taped to the inside lid. Claire. For when you're ready. I tore it open. Inside was a single page. Typewritten. Clean. Cold. They made me a villain because I saw through the mask. Operation Caldera wasn't a failure. It was a trade. Lies for profit. I refused to sign off. That made me dangerous. Kessler sold them out. I saw the transfer logs. I heard the orders. If you find this, it means I didn't make it to the hearing. Which means the system worked like it always does, corrupt and unaccountable. But truth has one thing on its side. It survives. I pressed play on the cassette. His voice, raspy, tired, filled the attic. If you're hearing this, Claire, they got to me. Don't go to the press. Don't go to command. Go to Rivera. And go fast. My legs gave out. I sat on the attic floor, holding the diary like a bomb. And for the first time in 2 years, I realized my father didn't just die. He was silenced. Operation Caldera. I'd seen the name in one of Dad's awards, printed cold and clean on a commendation letter. But the way he described it in his journal? It read like a crime scene report. Caldera was never a clean op. We weren't supposed to win. We were bait. Kessler fed us coordinates. But he'd already made contact with the warlords. Our orders walked us right into an ambush. Dunn lost his legs. Kamarov bled out waiting for medevac that never came. I flipped pages as fast as I could read. Dates. Details. Coordinates. But it wasn't just facts. It was guilt. I should have refused the mission. I should have seen it sooner. But I was proud, blind. When I threatened to blow the whistle, Kessler said, "You think this uniform makes you untouchable? We're all replaceable. Even you." Every word hit like a punch. But what cracked me open was the drawing tucked in the back. A stick figure. Labeled, "Me and Daddy." Safe. My handwriting. From when I was 5. I hadn't thought about that day in years. I'd drawn it after he came back from that mission, shaking, face pale, hugging me too long. I thought he was just tired. But he wasn't tired. He was broken. And now I understood why. Caldera wasn't failure. It was betrayal. I needed proof. Not just the diary. Not just the tape. So I called the one person he told me to trust. Rivera. No answer. But a minute later, I got a text. "Unknown number. Don't say my name. Don't call again. Meet me. Midnight. Pier 14. I didn't ask questions. When you're chasing ghosts, you follow their footprints, even into the dark. I parked 4 blocks away and walked. Pier 14 was quiet at midnight, dead quiet. Just the soft lap of black water and the distant buzz of the city pretending nothing was wrong. Boats rocked gently in their berths. A broken security light blinked like a slow warning. I wore black. No press badge. No phone. I waited. At exactly 12:03, I heard footsteps behind me, measured, deliberate. Claire. I turned. Major Rivera looked older than I remembered, leaner, grayer, but his eyes were sharp. Alert. Like he never left the field. "You weren't followed?" he asked. "I don't think so." He didn't nod. Just stepped past me and opened the cabin of an old maintenance boat. Inside, paper maps, a thermos, and a laptop powered by an external battery. "I should have burned this a decade ago," he said, pulling out a steel folder wrapped in plastic. "But your father made me promise, if anything happened to him, I'd pass it to you." He placed it in my hands. It was heavier than I expected. "What's in it?" I whispered. "Proof. That Operation Caldera wasn't just betrayal, it was business." He opened the laptop. The screen showed account transfers, some dated a week before the mission. Kessler's name. Shell companies. One file simply read, "The Crow List." "What's this?" Rivera's jaw clenched. Names. Soldiers who were left behind. Sacrificed. The mission needed a body count. Your father was supposed to be one of them. My stomach turned. "He lived," I said. "He did." So they made sure no one believed him. I flipped the folder open. Photos. Satellite feeds. Scanned mission briefs with redacted lines. "This is enough to bury Kessler." Rivera met my eyes. "Or bury you." Outside, a car engine echoed in the distance. Rivera looked up. "You need to go. Now. And Claire, don't trust anyone wearing a uniform unless you knew them before the war." He pressed a flash drive into my hand. "I'm not going to make it through this," he said. "But you might." And then he was gone. I didn't go home. I drove until the sun cracked the horizon, red and bleeding across the sky like something wounded. I ended up at a rest stop by the coast. Empty picnic tables. Salt in the air. The ocean looking endless and cold. I sat with the flash drive clutched in my palm. My father's journal opened beside me. My thoughts were loud. Too loud. What kind of man writes down the moment he realizes he's going to die? I reported it. I went through command. They laughed. Said I'd misunderstood. They said I was tired. Offered me leave. Then I got the letter, transferred off rotation. Reassigned. But not before the ambush. Not before I watched friends bleed while Kessler flew out early on urgent orders. I shut the book and stared out at the waves. This wasn't just grief. This was rage with direction. I didn't just want answers. I wanted accountability. But I wasn't stupid. If Rivera was right, they were watching me. Maybe it had been since I stepped into that attic. And then, I remembered something. The letter Dad sent me for my 18th birthday. The one that never made sense. A quote taped inside, "Truth is not only violated by falsehood, it may be equally outraged by silence." Back then, I thought it was just one of his philosophical tangents. But now, it was a warning. I drove back into the city, parked a block from my apartment, and walked the rest of the way. Everything felt tilted, familiar but off. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. When I reached my door, the lock was scratched. I froze. Inside, everything looked normal, but a drawer I always left half open was shut. My fridge light was off. Minor things, things no stranger should notice. Someone had been inside. Not to steal, to search. I backed out slowly, heart hammering. Time was up. This wasn't a story anymore. It was a war. I booked a hotel under a different name. Cheap, cash only, 20 minutes from downtown. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions because they didn't want answers. I showered with the bathroom light off. Slept with the dresser pushed against the door. The flash drive never left my pocket. The next morning, I opened it. Folder after folder appeared. Caldera protocols, loss reports, doctored black timber transfer logs, video, field recon, Bravo 7. I clicked the last one. The footage was grainy, filmed from a helmet cam. Soldiers trudging through dense jungle. One of them, voice filtered through static, says, "This isn't the route we planned." Another responds, "Orders changed." Kessler sent coordinates direct. The next 3 minutes are chaos. Gunfire. Screams. Explosions. And then silence. Except for one soldier, breathless, whispering. They left us. They F-I-N-G left us. I stared at the screen. Frozen. This wasn't a theory anymore. It was murder. I copied everything onto 3 encrypted backups. One I hid in a post office box under a fake name. Another I sent to a trusted journalist friend in D.C. without identifying details. Just a message. If I disappear, this story doesn't. The third stayed with me. I wasn't just carrying files. I was carrying the weight of 12 dead soldiers and a father whose last words were erased by politics. Later that night, as I sat watching the city blur past my motel window, my phone lit up. Blocked number. You don't know what you're walking into. Turn back. Last warning. I didn't reply. Because they were right. I didn't know what I was walking into. But I was walking in anyway. I didn't go back to the motel. I took a city bus 2 hours out, to a church Rivera once mentioned in my dad's letters. St. Helena's, he'd called it. The one place I ever saw peace in his eyes. It sat on the edge of a quiet town, more stone than faith. No crowd. Just cracked pews, stained glass saints, and an old man sweeping the front steps. "You're late," he said without looking up. I stopped in my tracks. "Excuse me." He pointed the broom at my chest. "You've got Morgan's eyes. And the same damn curse, truth in a place that punishes honesty." His name was Deacon Saul. Retired chaplain. Served 3 tours with my father. He led me inside without another word. The air smelled like old paper and ash. He pulled back a rug and unlocked a hidden floor hatch. "Your father's last confession wasn't about sin. It was about guilt. He left this here the day before his discharge." I climbed down into a space the size of a small cellar. Old crates. A desk. A safe. Saul handed me a key. Inside were maps, copies of field notes, and a second diary, one Dad never showed anyone. I flipped through it fast, then stopped. One word was underlined in red ink on 3 separate pages. Krawach. "What's Krawach?" I asked. Saul's jaw twitched. "Not what? Who?" He pulled out a faded photo. 5 men in uniform. One was my father. One was Rivera. The others I didn't recognize, except for one in the back, slightly out of focus. Kessler. Krawach was supposed to be an elite recon unit, Saul said quietly. But it turned into something else. Quiet ops. Unofficial targets. Untraceable money. Your dad tried to shut it down. I felt my stomach coil. And the men in this photo? I asked. 2 are dead. One's missing. And the last one, he looked at me, is watching you right now. I spun around toward the church doors. They were open. I hadn't left them that way. Gunshot. It cracked through the stained glass like thunder. A bullet smacked the wall inches from my head. Saul dropped, pulling me behind the pews. "They're not here to scare you," he hissed. No time to panic. My legs moved before my brain did. I shoved the diary and map into my backpack, clutched the flash drive in my fist, and bolted toward the back exit. Another shot. Wood splintered behind my shoulder. I ducked into the alley, heart hammering in my ears. The street was fogged. Someone had tossed a smoke grenade. Not military grade, but close enough. A black van idled at the end of the road, its engine low and mean. I ran left. Footsteps echoed behind me, 2, maybe 3 people. No shouting. No barking orders. Just cold, trained silence. They weren't police. I turned down an alley, kicked open the door of a boarded laundromat, and slid behind a row of rusted dryers. My lungs felt like they'd collapse. My hand shook, still clenched around the flash drive. 2 shadows entered the building. I crouched low, holding my breath. Then I heard it, one of them speak into a radio. She still has the drive. Confirmed. Still has it. Which meant someone had been tracking me all along. Someone close. I tapped my phone once. A Signal Bounce app I'd installed blinked red. They'd cloned my SIM. My own phone had been leaking location data since day one. I slipped out the back window, shoes crunching glass. Got to the train station. Bought 3 tickets under 3 names. Boarded the last train northbound without looking back. I didn't cry. I didn't breathe right for half an hour. But I didn't stop moving. Because they wanted the flash drive. And I was finally starting to understand why. I got off the train in a nowhere town with a dying main street and a 24-hour diner that hadn't updated its menu since the 90s. I took a seat in the corner booth, ordered coffee I wouldn't drink, and opened my laptop. The folder I hadn't dared open until now. Crowwatch, crow_list.pdf. I clicked. Names. Dozens of them. Some marked with an asterisk. Some crossed out. Most had rank notations beside them. Dates. Coordinates. Operations. But one detail froze my blood. Next to each name, a dollar figure. And every figure was identical. $250,000. I kept scrolling. Then I saw the last name. Morgan James. Status. Pending. I couldn't breathe. My father had been worth $250,000 to someone. I wasn't reading a kill list. I was reading a bounty ledger. Crowwatch wasn't just a shadow unit. It was a private hit network. Funded under black budget strings, then expanded through illicit deals and silent murders. My father had found the list. Tried to bring it forward. And for that, he became pending. I looked at the crossed-out names. One was Rivera's. And yet, he was alive. Unless my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I picked up, pulse thudding. A voice I knew too well. Claire, Rivera rasped. They got me. I've only got a minute. You have to go public. Now. Where are you? I can help. No. Listen to me. Kessler's not working alone. He never was. Crowwatch isn't dead. It's just got a new name. I heard a door slam on his end. Footsteps. A crash. Then, the name is gunshot. Static. Silence. I sat frozen in that diner booth. The call still lived, the silence on the other end louder than anything I'd ever heard. Rivera was gone. Not metaphorically. Not in hiding. Gone. Murdered mid-sentence while trying to tell me the name of the new version of Crowwatch. I closed my eyes, clenched my jaw, and replayed his final words in my head. The name is the call had crackled right before the shot. But not fully. The audio glitched, distorted, but maybe not lost. I uploaded the last 10 seconds to an audio recovery tool on my laptop. The waveform loaded. I filtered for low frequency. Then I heard it. Not from Rivera, but behind him. A voice. Calm. Casual. Chilling. Say it, and you're dead. Then the gunshot. My throat dried. Whoever shot Rivera wasn't just silencing him. They were watching him. Listening. Probably knew he was calling me. And yet, I didn't shut the laptop. Because under the waveform window was a file I hadn't noticed before. A hidden recording. Rivera_final.wave. He'd planned for this. I hit play. His voice came through quieter, but steady. If this file's been triggered, I'm dead. So listen. The new name is Echo Division. Funded through a shadow logistics wing of Black Timber. They're using humanitarian cover-ops. You'll find them under contracts for emergency resource distribution. It's all a lie. Same kill team. Same money. Same target list. He paused. Claire, I couldn't save your father. but you can finish what he started. I stared at the screen. Echo Division. A name I'd never heard, but one I'd tear apart. If they thought killing Rivera would stop me, they didn't know the fire they just poured gasoline on. I checked out of the motel before sunrise, took the back exit, and left the flash drive in a Dropbox 2 towns over. It was time for a different tactic. I needed someone who still had eyes inside the system. Someone clean, or close enough. I found him in a contact list my father kept under the codename Cicada. Turns out, Cicada was a retired signal intel analyst named Arthur Dune. Last known address, a cabin in northern Vermont. Lived off the grid. Paranoid. Smart. And still angry. I drove 13 hours straight. No music. No radio. Just road, fear, and a growing hunger for justice. Dune didn't answer the door. But he was watching. A drone hovered over my car as I stepped out. A voice came from a speaker hidden in the trees. Name, affiliation, and intent. My name is Claire Morgan. James Morgan was my father. I have the Echo Division files. Rivera's dead. Silence. Then, wait there. 10 minutes later, the cabin door opened. Dune stepped out, wrapped in layers of flannel, silver beard, and gunmetal eyes. You're a fool to come here, he said. I'm already marked. He didn't smile. Just nodded and gestured me inside. His cabin was a fortress. Triple lock doors. Radio jammers. A laptop inside a Faraday cage. I showed him the documents. The crow list. Rivera's audio. He listened with clenched fists. Jesus, he whispered. They didn't dismantle it. They privatized it. What do you mean? They took Krawatch Dark. Buried it under contractor shells. Echo Division's now tied to NGOs, think tanks, even logistics firms in Europe. It's not just American anymore. It's global. He looked at me with something between pity and respect. You realize what you're holding, don't you? I'm holding the truth. No, Claire, he said. You're holding a weapon, and they'll burn the world to take it back. Dune didn't waste time. Within hours, he had spun up a VPN chain so thick even satellites couldn't trace it. We moved into a cold planning zone. 1 desk, 3 laptops, and a digital whiteboard that read, Echo Collapse. I told him I wanted a public release. A full drop. Everything. He shook his head. Won't work. Too many filters. Echo Division will scrub, spin, and bury you before it hits 12 clicks. You need one shot. One that cuts through. Where? He tapped a dot on the map. Arlington. Veterans Day Parade. 4 days from now. Kessler was giving a keynote address. Live broadcast. National coverage. Secure but not impenetrable. You get on that stage, he said. You own the story. They can't mute a ghost if the whole country hears it first. But how do I even get access? He slid me a press badge. I blinked. How? I used to listen for enemies. Now I listen for cracks. You're listed as freelance under a sister syndicate. They don't know who you really are yet. I stared at the credential in my hand. This was it. Not a leak. Not a whisper. A blast. I'd confront Kessler in front of the cameras. In front of veterans. In front of everyone who ever bought his war hero lie. And I'd make him answer for Bravo Team. For Rivera. For my father. But Dune leaned in, voice low and razor sharp. One rule, Claire. Once you hit play, you don't run. You stand your ground. I wasn't planning to run. He smirked. Then we're in business. I stood in front of the mirror in a borrowed coat and a press badge that felt like a loaded weapon. 4 days had collapsed into one. The parade was tomorrow. Kessler would step onto a stage at exactly 10 a.m. A speech. A salute. A broadcast reaching 22 million homes. And I'd be there, center stage. But first, we had to test the broadcast hijack. Dune's plan was risky. Override the satellite relay for exactly 90 seconds. That window would be my father's voice, layered over real footage, projected across every screen streaming the parade. We couldn't do it twice. Only once. Dune ran a simulation on his encrypted laptop. 90 seconds. Any longer, and they cut the feed. Less than that, and people miss it. I nodded, hands ice cold. What if Kessler runs? I asked. Then you follow him with truth in your teeth. His words stuck. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. It was something deeper. A weight. Like I was dragging my father's legacy behind me, not carrying it. I checked the flash drive for the 100th time. Files intact. My father's voice cued. The crow list cropped to show just enough. And at the end of the video, a single sentence on screen. Colonel James Morgan was murdered for the truth. The timing had to be perfect. Dune handed me an earpiece. Once you're in position, I'll guide the signal drop. I only get one shot. He met my eyes. Then don't miss. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark motel room, staring at the ceiling, whispering my father's name like a promise. And when morning came, I got up, zipped the flash drive into my press coat, and walked straight into the lion's den. It was strange watching the world celebrate a lie. Flags waved. Brass bands blared. Children on shoulders clapped for men in medals who didn't deserve them. Veterans stood tall, chests puffed. But most didn't know the truth. They'd bled for men like Kessler, not realizing those same men profited from their wounds. I walked past security with no issue. My forged credentials scanned clean. Dune's voice crackled in my ear. Signal test is green. Feed override ready. You're 2 minutes out. I nodded once, moving through the media tent with practiced ease. My heart beat like a war drum, but my face was calm. Kessler was already on stage, 10 feet above the crowd, draped in the nation's colors, surrounded by flashing cameras. I hated how good he looked in uniform. Next to the stage was the live broadcast hub, a table of monitors and a port switch. I slipped behind a reporter, pretending to adjust camera gear. The thumb drive was in my palm. 30 seconds, Dune whispered. I moved to the port, plugged in the drive, and hit upload. My screen blinked. Upload in progress. 3%. 9%. The speakers behind Kessler crackled softly, a slight buzz no one else noticed. He cleared his throat. Today, we honor the courage of the fallen. Then the screen behind him glitched. Twice. Then cut to black. Kessler paused mid-sentence. 10 seconds, Dune said. Hold. I stepped back. The crowd started murmuring. Then the audio kicked in. Operation Caldera. This is Colonel James Morgan. If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. The screen lit up. Helmet cam footage played. Screams. Explosions. Radio chatter. People gasped. A woman covered her mouth. Kessler turned, face pale. Who did this? He barked off mic. I stood at the base of the stage and whispered to myself, you did. The world froze for 90 seconds. Morgan's voice echoed through loudspeakers meant for national pride. Instead, they became confession chambers. The footage was brutal. Real. Raw. Soldiers screaming for medevac. Coordinates that matched blacked-out documents. A voice Kessler's ordering withdrawal just before the ambush. Then, the final slide. Colonel James Morgan was murdered for the truth. Then black. Silence. A single breath. Then chaos. Kessler turned from the crowd, barking orders. The broadcast cut too late, just long enough for millions to see. Journalists swarmed. Veterans shouted. A few guards rushed toward the broadcast tent. Dune's voice snapped through my earpiece. Claire, get out, now. I ripped the drive from the port, bolted through the back lot, shoved past a crowd, and sprinted down a service alley. I could still hear Kessler yelling into a radio. Find her. I want her now. I ran. Behind me, sirens. Helicopters. But also voices. People were repeating my father's name. Not in disgrace, but in awe. By the time I reached the van, Dune already had it running. We didn't speak for a full minute. Finally, he broke the silence. You just turned the tide. I just started a war. He looked at me. No. You just made the first honest speech that Parade's ever seen. I looked down at the backup drive in my hand, the original still untouched. Dune had a backup of the backup ready to push to every press outlet within hours. But I wasn't done. Kessler had been exposed, but not taken down. Not yet. He still had people protecting him. Still had Echo Division. But now the world knew his name. And mine. And I wasn't hiding anymore. By nightfall, half the country had seen the video. But by morning, the spin had begun. News channels shifted tone. At first, cautious sympathy. By 10 a.m., the headlines had changed. Anonymous hacker interferes with veterans broadcast. Military investigating staged footage tied to disgraced officer, conspiracy, or cyber attack. Dune slammed his laptop shut, jaw clenched. They're not just burying it. They're flipping it. They're trying to paint my father as a liar. Exactly. If they can't disprove the footage, they'll discredit the source. I rubbed my temples, exhausted. What about the journalists we sent the drive to? One of them's missing. Another published, then pulled the article within the hour. Kessler, Echo Division. He's just the suit. The machine behind him is what we're really up against. He pointed to a name in the decrypted metadata. Paragon Securitech, a defense contractor we'd seen linked to relief ops in 5 countries. But they weren't delivering supplies. They were laundering bodies. And now they were coming for us. We kept moving. Cheap hotels, side roads, encrypted routers. But still, they found us. It happened outside a gas station in Pennsylvania. I was returning to the van with coffee when I noticed him. A man in a military coat. Too clean, too still. His right eye shimmered strangely in the light. Artificial. He wasn't blinking. He was watching me. I turned sharply and ducked back behind a gas pump. Dune's voice came through my earpiece. Claire, don't panic. Is his left lapel stitched with a black triangle? I looked. Yes. That's not military. That's Echo. He didn't have to say more. I was already moving. But it was too late. The man was gone. I ran to the van. Inside, Dune held up a phone. He jammed our signal. Look, the GPS tracker had been pinged and redirected. They're pushing us into a kill zone, he said. We need to ditch the van. We switched vehicles with a contact Dune trusted, a mechanic who didn't ask questions. That night, I stared out the window of our borrowed car as trees blurred past. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. They called my father a traitor. Now they were trying to erase me too. But they forgot one thing. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was public. Dune made the call. It's time to blow the roof off. What do you mean? No more subtle drops. No more press filters. We're going full detonation. We encrypted every file, footage, documents, logs, audio, and uploaded it to 3 separate platforms, one to a public leaks site, another to veteran forums, and one embedded into a live stream under a burner identity. Then we added a face. Mine. Claire Morgan. Journalist. Daughter of Colonel James Morgan. On camera, my voice shook, but not from fear. From fire. My father didn't die in combat. He died trying to expose the men who treated war like a business and soldiers like currency. And I have the proof. The video spread fast. Veteran groups reposted it. Families of fallen soldiers messaged me. And then, a reply video appeared. Posted from a burner account. A man in shadows. Voice modulated. But the words made my blood run cold. Claire Morgan, stop. We see you. The next move you make will end you. This is not a game. We don't miss twice. The comments exploded. People demanded answers. But I just stared at the screen and whispered back to the threat. You missed the first time. And I'm not hiding anymore. We arrived at the safe house just after midnight. It wasn't in any system. A cabin off a private trail, owned under an alias Dune had created 15 years ago when he was still intercepting satellite feeds for the Pentagon. It looked ordinary. Creaking porch, faded shutters, smell of pine and dry rot. But underneath, it was reinforced with steel mesh and 2 panic rooms. I bought it after Crowatch started disappearing people, Dune said, tossing me a duffel. Never thought I'd need it again. Inside, he laid out the plan. We couldn't just leak. We had to name names. Echo Division didn't just kill your father, Dune said. They cleaned the records. Moved the money. Hid the bodies. We need a face. Someone active. There was one. Colonel Lucas Strain. He'd served under Kessler. But now he was Echo Division's domestic operations chief, posing as a counterterrorism advisor for a national security board. But before that, he was on the Caldera Manifest. We found a photo of him, laughing, drink in hand, taken 3 weeks after Bravo team's ambush. A party funded by Paragon. Where is he now? I asked. Dune looked grim. He's speaking tomorrow at a closed fundraiser. High-ranking military, intel, press. I felt the fire rise in my chest again. I want in. Dune hesitated. Then we go in with everything. We arrived dressed like everyone else, clean, quiet, forgettable. I wore black. Press badge tucked into a blazer pocket. Dune walked beside me, gray hair slicked back. I scanning everything. The event was a high society networking circus masked as a veteran's benefit. Crystal chandeliers. Laughter over blood money. Highball glasses clinked by men who'd never held a dying soldier. And then I saw him. Colonel Lucas Strain. Confident. Polished. Smiling like he'd never made anyone vanish. He was mid-speech when I moved. Dune slipped a USB into the AV desk. Same method we used at the parade, but this time, we didn't cut the feed. We merged it. As Strain spoke about duty and sacrifice, the screens behind him flickered and switched to classified heat map overlays of civilian contractor deaths traced to Echo Ops. Names, faces, timestamps, all burned into the monitors behind him. Strain froze. Gasps echoed through the room. Phones came out. Flashes. Questions. I stepped forward. Loud and clear. Tell us, Colonel, how much was each soldier worth? Because we found your budget reports. Security started to move. Strain tried to answer, but stumbled. This is foreign propaganda. A lot. Dune activated the final slide. A scanned document, signed by Strain himself. Operation Caldera. Target, classified. Authorization, Lucas Strain. Silence. No one clapped. No one defended him. He looked like a man falling off a stage he built with his own lies. And that's when Dune whispered, "They'll come now." We left before security could fully react. By the time they shut down the screens, half the room had already uploaded videos. Strain's face was on every platform by midnight. But we didn't celebrate. Because the next morning, Dune's cabin was gone. Not raided. Gone. Burned to the foundation. Charred. Collapsed. Still smoldering. They'd found us. Not with trackers. Not with tech. With people. Dune stared at the ashes, jaw tight. They turned someone inside one of the groups. Maybe a vet. Maybe press. Doesn't matter. It's scorched now. I felt the smoke sting my eyes. Not from fire, but fury. They're not covering it up anymore, I said. No, Dune agreed. They're declaring war. Back in the car, I opened my inbox. Flooded. Hundreds of messages. Some fake. Some supportive. But one stood out. Subject. I served with your father. I have something you need. From Jacob Dunn. The name hit me like a slap. He was on the original Crow list. One of the only survivors from Operation Caldera. But the file had listed him as dead. If he was alive, it meant someone inside Crowwatch had lied about their own cleanup. And that meant we had a crack in the armor. We drove 6 hours straight. The message from Jacob Dunn had no greeting. No sign-off. Just coordinates in one sentence. If you're followed, I disappear forever. The location was a defunct ranger station upstate, hidden by dense trees and crumbling signage. No one lived nearby. No cell reception. Dune had to build a makeshift relay just to check the perimeter. When we arrived, the air felt heavier. Not just from isolation, but from history. From the kind of silence that came after blood. Jacob Dunn didn't open the door right away. When he finally did, he looked nothing like the soldier from my father's photos. He was thinner, skin weathered, eyes too alert. One hand on a shotgun, the other trembling. "Claire Morgan," he said. "You're your father's fire with your mother's eyes. Why did you fake your death?" I asked. He didn't answer, just motioned us inside. The room was lined with maps, marked up documents, and photos. Old footage ran silently on a TV in the corner. Jungle ops, burned trucks, bodies with blacked-out tags. "I faked it," he finally said, "because I saw what happened to the others." Kessler didn't want silence. He wanted obedience. Your father refused. I ran. He handed me a photo. It was Bravo team. Every face crossed out in red. Except his. Except my dad's. You were there the night Caldera collapsed? I asked. Dunn nodded slowly. And I have something no one else does. He reached into a floorboard and pulled out a battered hard drive. Your father gave me this. Told me to vanish. Said one day, his daughter would find the truth. The hard drive took hours to decrypt. Dune ran layers of firewall bypass, while Dunn watched from the shadows, hands trembling, mind clearly still stuck in the jungle he never really left. When the files opened, we saw things no one was meant to. Surveillance logs, internal memos, secret operational videos. And then, the jackpot, a series of intercepted private voice memos between Kessler and his backers. The first one made my blood run cold. Morgan's daughter is alive. We should have finished that family when we had the chance. She's louder than he ever was. Then another. Crow Watch is the past. Echo Division is the future. One world, one contract, zero accountability. And then, a logistics report detailing a planned purge. They weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were prepping for expansion. New recruits. New targets. A government liaison had already been bought. Documents showed that Echo was weeks away from full private integration into national security advisory roles. If they succeeded, they wouldn't need to silence whistleblowers. They'd write the rules themselves. Dunn stared at the screen. This isn't a cover-up anymore. It's a coup. Dune turned to me. If we're going to stop this, it has to be now. Public, explosive, undeniable. This data goes wide, all channels, no filter. I looked at them both. Then at the recording of my father on the screen, calm, bloodied, still speaking truth even with death at his heels. No, I said. I'm going after Kessler myself. It took us 3 days to get eyes on Kessler. He was holed up at a strategic security retreat in Maryland. Government officials, private security CEOs, think tank operatives, 3 layers of perimeter fencing and enough ex-military muscle to hold off a battalion. But Dune had hacked the entry logs. A guest speaker credential was issued under a familiar alias, Elena Serrano, defense policy analyst. That alias belonged to a woman who'd gone missing 6 months earlier. Her ID was still in Echo's system. We can use it, Dune said. But it'll be a suicide run if you go in alone. I'm not going in alone, I said. You'll be my extraction. I memorized the floor plan. Trained with Dune for 12 hours straight. Flash drive loaded with the final files. My father's voice cued and ready. Kessler would be speaking at the end of the evening, closing remarks. One final manipulation before his empire went dark and untraceable. Unless I made it shine. Unless I stood up in that marble conference hall and made him fall in front of the men he thought owned the world. The night before the infiltration, I sat on the hood of our car under a bleeding sky. Dunn stood beside me. He didn't say much. Just looked at me and asked, "You sure about this?" I looked him in the eye and said, "They made him a villain. I'm going to make him unforgettable." The building looked like a retreat center, wood panels, stone floors, framed flags on the walls. But beneath the patriotic polish, it was a fortress. Every attendee wore a name tag they didn't earn. Smiles felt weaponized. Claire moved through the crowd like a ghost with purpose, her press badge under the alias Elena Serrano clipped at just the right angle. Through her earpiece, Dune whispered updates. South corridor clear. Security rotation every 6 minutes. You have a 90-second blind spot after the 3rd speech. Kessler was scheduled to speak at 8:15. Claire needed to be in position by 8:05. She passed through a hallway lined with military plaques and strategy awards. The irony made her stomach twist. In a side room labeled Tactical Communications, she plugged in the flash drive. The screen blinked to life. All files primed. This wasn't just going to be a leak. It would be a live truth detonation. She closed the panel and made her way to the hall. Rows of seats faced a polished oak podium. Men in suits chatted, checking watches. A retired general gave her a nod. She nodded back, every movement rehearsed. And then Kessler walked in. Applause. Cameras. No guilt in his eyes. Just power, carved into a face the world mistook for honorable. Claire slipped into the 3rd row, center. Behind her, a man sat down. She didn't turn. He leaned in. I told them not to underestimate you. Her spine stiffened. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. She turned, slowly, and her heart stopped. It was Rivera. Alive. Claire couldn't breathe. Rivera, worn, older, but undeniably alive, stared back at her like he hadn't faked his own death 2 weeks ago. What the hell? She whispered. I heard the gunshot. I buried your voice. He held up a finger. Not here. Not now. Cameras are rolling. I'll find you after the speech. She didn't know what to believe. Her mind raced. Dune thought Rivera was dead. Claire had mourned him, had launched the echo broadcast with his final words. And now he was here, breathing, watching, calm, as if nothing had happened. Kessler took the stage, applause rising again. Claire barely heard the speech. Her pulse drowned it all out. She clutched the remote trigger in her coat pocket. One press, and her father's voice would interrupt this parade of corruption again. But her hand froze. She had to know the truth first. She slipped out as the audience clapped mid-speech. Waited by the exit. Rivera joined her 2 minutes later, quietly pulling her down a side stairwell. I had to fake it, he said. Echo was closing in. They bugged our drop line. They would have killed me for real. You said they got you. You said I was being watched. I had seconds. I used a flashbang audio loop to sell it. You lied to me. I kept you alive. Claire's fists clenched. Why are you even here? Rivera looked away. Because you're about to play the wrong card. Kessler isn't the man behind this. Her stomach dropped. What? Kessler's dirty. But he's not the architect. He's the weapon, not the hand holding it. Claire stepped back, eyes narrowing. Then who is? Rivera's face hardened. Your father's best friend. Claire stared at him. No, that's not possible. Rivera nodded, slowly. It is. Colonel Thomas Vale. The name felt like a slap. Vale was a name she knew well, her father's closest friend. He'd helped raise her after the funeral. He'd spoken at her mother's wake. You're telling me he was part of Crow Watch? No, Rivera said. I'm telling you he ran it. Claire backed into the wall, legs weak. He's retired. Quiet. No political connections. Rivera's expression darkened. That's the lie. They'll step back, yes. But only to shield his fingerprints. He built Croatch with Kessler as his front. When Caldera went south, your father went to him first. Begged him to go public. Vale promised to handle it. Claire's throat tightened. And then Dad died in a car crash. Rivera nodded. Engine control override. Same tech used in Echo purchase. Vale signed off. Claire couldn't speak. She felt the floor tilt. Memories rushed in, Vale at their house, holding her shoulder at the funeral, telling her, your dad was brave, but sometimes bravery costs too much. She thought it was grief. Now she knew it was guilt. Rivera stepped closer. You want to take down Kessler? Do it. But if you want to end this, you go through Vale. Claire looked down at the remote trigger in her hand. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. It was about surgical truth. She pocketed the trigger and whispered, then we finish this properly. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Claire couldn't sleep. She sat in the safe house kitchen, knuckles wide around a chipped mug of stale coffee. Rivera paced nearby, the tension between them a coiled wire neither was ready to cut. Across the room, Dune silently stared at the decrypted file Rivera had brought. A full personnel manifest, Croatch's core team. And there it was. Thomas Vale, strategic architect. Status, active intelligence liaison. Claire ran a hand through her hair. He used to bring me cookies. He came to my school recital. How do I process this? How do I even begin to? You don't process it, Rivera said, voice low. You end it. Dune turned the laptop to her. This is his schedule. Vale speaking at a black-level defense review in 3 days. No press. No cameras. But high value. If we intercept there, we can corner him with evidence, force him to talk, maybe on record. Claire leaned forward. Or, Dune's eyes were cold. Or we release everything with his name plastered across it. Full ruin. No trial. Just exposure. Rivera folded his arms. He won't go quietly. If you're going after him, prepare for a backlash. Claire looked up at both men. I'm not just going after him, she said. I'm going to make him confess. The defense review was held in a marble and glass fortress just outside D.C. No military banners, no patriotic colors, just modern silence and cold formality. The kind of place where secrets didn't echo, they evaporated. Claire wore a borrowed ID badge, this time under the name Harper Wynn, a credential created by Rivera's deep access credentials still active in parts of the intelligence backdoor. As they entered the building, Rivera whispered, "He's on level 4. Conference room C. 30-minute panel. Your window's short." Claire moved with precision, elevator, hallway, stairs. She passed analysts, contractors, men who built wars from boardroom tables. Then conference room C. Inside, Vale stood at the head of a table, arms behind his back. Older now, grayer. But still sharp. Still commanding. Claire didn't hesitate. She stepped in, held up her press badge, and calmly said, "Room's been requested for a classified recording. All non-participants, please exit." Half the room cleared, bureaucrats too afraid to question authority. Only Vale and 2 aides remained. Claire locked the door behind her. Vale turned, slowly, recognizing her instantly. "Claire," he said, softly, "I wondered when you'd come." She stared at him. "You don't get to use my name like that." He nodded, almost regretfully. Then he said, "I did what had to be done. Your father made it impossible." For a second, Claire didn't speak. Then she stepped forward and placed a recorder on the table. Clicked it on. "Say that again." Vale looked at the door, at her hand, at the calm rage in her eyes. James threatened the chain of command. He wanted to take the story public. Directly. That kind of exposure doesn't just destroy careers, it triggers international incidents. He had evidence of corruption. Mass death. He tried to do what was right. He tried to do what was loud. Vale said, coldly now. "There's a difference." Claire's voice cracked. "You had him killed." "No. I approved a correction." He was warned. He didn't stop. "I didn't pull the trigger, Claire, but I built the road to it." She stepped back like she'd been slapped. He continued, unflinching. "Do you think the world runs on truth? No. It runs on order. Your father was brilliant, but he became a danger. And I." Claire pulled the trigger. Not of a weapon, but of the recorder live stream, linked through Dune's system. Everything Vale just said, it was already broadcasting. To the world. To every soldier, journalist, survivor, and silent observer still doubting the truth. Vale froze. Claire stepped forward, whispered just loud enough. This wasn't justice. She looked him dead in the eye. This was vengeance. The moment Vale's voice echoed across the feeds, the world didn't pause. It snapped. Within an hour, military forums lit up. Hashtags surged. Hashtag Morgan was right. Hashtag Echo Files. Hashtag Operation Caldera. News anchors stumbled through breaking reports. Congressional committees were considering action. Social media flooded with footage of Claire standing in that marble room, facing down the man who signed her father's death. But inside the building, it was chaos. Security stormed the floor. Claire bolted. Dune's voice cut through her earpiece. "North stairwell. Now." "Extractions inbound." She ran. Vale didn't chase. He didn't beg. He just stood there, his empire collapsing one word at a time. Claire burst through a fire exit and into a parking structure. Dune was waiting, engine revving. She dove into the car. Tires squealed. Alarms screamed behind them. "We did it," she breathed. Dune glanced at her. "We started it." Because exposure wasn't the end. It was an invitation. And Echo had just accepted. They hit the broadcast station first. Not with a bomb. With a blackout. All feeds tied to the Echo confession, gone in seconds. Servers torched. Journalists intimidated. One tech producer hospitalized. The message was clear. Truth is temporary. Control is permanent. Claire stood in Dune's bunker, watching blank monitors. They're retaliating. Dune didn't flinch. They're erasing. But then Rivera burst through the door, pale and breathless. "We've got a bigger problem." He threw a folder on the table. Inside, photos. Military convoys. Civilian contractors. Black timber logos. all moving toward a new site. Echoes relocating, regrouping under a new name, Project Halberd. Claire flipped through the pages. What is it? Dune answered grimly. The final step? Full privatization. Zero oversight. They're about to become legal. Once they do, Rivera added, they'll vanish for real. You'll never touch them again. Claire looked at them both. Then we stopped them before they crossed that line. How? Rivera asked. She met his gaze without blinking. We go public again. But this time, we bring proof they can't scrub. 3 nights later, Claire stood in a warehouse surrounded by ghosts. Photos lined the walls, every name from the Crow list. Dunn was there too, hunched over a projector, shaking hands setting up the last batch of files. Former soldiers arrived in silence, men and women who had lost friends, family, careers. This wasn't a leak. This was a gathering of witnesses. A movement. One man, missing a leg, wheeled forward. I served under Morgan. I believed the lie for 10 years. Now I just want people to know he never failed us. A woman in uniform nodded. He tried to save us. And they made him disappear. Claire stepped onto a makeshift stage. She held up her father's journal, the original one. The same one she'd found under the floorboards. My father wasn't perfect, she said, voice steady. But he died standing up to something we were all told to ignore. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for memory. She opened the journal. And read the names. One by one. Dune recorded the entire event. Rivera handled distribution channels, this time ones Echo couldn't reach. Offline. Encrypted. Physical. And when it launched, it wasn't a story anymore. It was a record. But Echo didn't fade. They mutated. Within days, Project Halberd announced its launch, masked as a humanitarian tech and logistics platform. Their slogan? Efficiency through stability. Security through innovation. Backed by 3 former generals, 2 tech billionaires, and a sitting senator, Halberd offered private protection contracts to global institutions. It was everything Echo had done, now with branding. And Vale? Officially disavowed. Quietly protected. They cut off the tail to save the beast, Dune muttered. Claire stared at the Halberd press release, sick to her core. They're not even hiding anymore. Rivera clenched his jaw. They don't have to. The story's already slipping. People have short memories. Not this time, Claire said. Dune looked at her. Then you better be ready for the last step. What is it? He pulled up a map. A Halberd launch facility, not a base, not a headquarters. A data fortress. If they took it, they could expose everything: emails, kill contracts, internal comms, financial trails. But it was fortified. And time was running out. Claire exhaled. Then we hit them where they think they're safest. The facility sat in the Colorado Rockies, carved into a mountain that looked like it hadn't been touched since the earth formed. No signs. No roads. Just a cleared-out canyon with a single unmarked access tunnel. Dune dropped the schematics onto the table. Halberd's fortress. Built under the pretense of being a weather data center. Top-level clearance. 4-tier biometric access. If we hit this, we get the full archive. Everything they've tried to bury. Claire studied the layout. What kind of security? Next-gen surveillance. Internal drones. Rotating code locks. And a private strike team stationed on-site. So we're breaking into a digital war bunker. Exactly. Rivera added, there's a 3-minute maintenance blackout at 3 a.m. every 4 days. Cooling system reset. That's your window. Claire nodded. Then we go in, pull everything, and walk out before they know what hit them. Dune raised an eyebrow. No, we don't walk out. She looked at him. We run. The warehouse became their prep zone. Dune soldered trackers and EMP grenades. Rivera secured tactical comms. Claire trained, physically and mentally, running through infiltration routines like a soldier born for war. But it wasn't just strategy. It was personal. She kept her father's journal in her chest pocket. A kind of armor. A reminder of what this was really for. The night before the op, Claire stood alone on the roof, wind howling around her. Rivera joined her. He held out a weathered dog tag. Your dad gave this to me before Caldera. Said if anything happened to him, make sure it found its way home. Claire took it with shaking fingers. Why didn't you give it to me before? Because you weren't ready to carry it. No? You're more him than he ever was. Claire swallowed hard, then clipped the tag to her vest. At 2:47 a.m., they arrived. The SUV rolled to a silent stop a quarter-mile from the canyon. Snow flurried in sideways gusts. Dune manned the comms van. Claire and Rivera moved on foot, ghosting through the pine shadows. 15 minutes, Dune whispered in their ears. System reset in T-2. Claire checked her watch. Heart steady. They reached the access hatch camouflaged behind rock plating. Rivera pried it open with a thermal override spike. The tunnel beyond was narrow, metallic, and humming with hidden energy. As the blackout hit, the lights above flickered. Claire whispered, "Go." They sprinted down the passage, reached the first security door. Rivera hacked the keypad while Claire planted the EMP puck. 3, 2, now. The door clicked open. They were inside. Not a base. A vault. The Halberd data core was buried 5 levels deep, beneath titanium plating and a spider web of encrypted servers. Claire moved fast, downloading the archive with a portable drive. Footage flickered across the terminal screen, videos of Echo operations, internal memos, bank transfers, and execution orders signed with digital fingerprints. Then, another folder appeared. Operation Coil, Domestic Containment Strategy. She opened it. Inside were names. Politicians. Journalists. Whistleblowers. All marked for surveillance or neutralization. Claire froze. Her name was at the top of the list. And beneath it? James Morgan's status. Resolved. She felt fire rise in her throat. Rivera's voice cut through. We've got what we need. Let's go. Claire copied the folder onto a separate drive. This wasn't just evidence. It was the final bullet. They turned to leave, and the alarm screamed to life. The sirens screamed through the mountain's veins, deep, pulsing, relentless. Claire and Rivera burst through the access corridor, boots pounding steel grates, the sound of boots behind them doubling in echo. They've sealed the tunnel we came through, Rivera shouted over comms. Claire didn't slow. Then we make a new exit. Dune's voice cracked through the headset. Reroute east. Service shaft ahead, if they haven't locked it down yet. The hallway split. Red emergency lights blinked like blood warnings. Shadows danced along the curved walls. Claire counted 3 seconds between flickers, enough to run half a corridor without being seen. They darted into the shaft entrance just as 2 Echo operatives rounded the opposite corner. Gunfire exploded behind them. Claire dropped to her knee, fired twice. One down. Rivera pulled a flash charge from his belt, tossed it back. The hallway erupted in white light and static. They moved fast, climbing steel ladders into a narrow vertical shaft filled with pipes and hissing steam. We're losing them, Claire whispered. We're not here to lose them, Rivera growled. We're here to finish this. Back in the van, Dune worked like a man possessed. Sweat soaked through his collar as code blurred across his triple-screen setup. We've got one shot, he muttered. I can override the uplink from here and blast the entire data core into every public feed. But we'll have to burn the drive to do it. Claire's voice crackled over comms. Burn it? Not just yet, Dune replied. This signal needs a voice. He reached into the equipment bag and pulled out a cassette, James Morgan's final, unedited field recording. The one no one had heard but him. He hadn't told Claire. He had saved it for this. As he prepared the data sync, Dune played the tape through the system, weaving the confession into the final file dump. James Morgan's voice filled the cabin. If my death buys them silence, then they'll win. If you hear this, let it be loud. Let it be fire. The signal synced. Dune hovered his finger over the broadcast key. Claire, he said, voice cracking. You ready to burn this empire down? Do it, she whispered. He hit send. Across the country, phones lit up. Screens blinked mid-news broadcast. Social platforms froze, then restarted with new uploads tagged #HalberdLeak. The footage unspooled in horrifying waves. Soldiers gunned down while command turned away. Internal memos approving black ops on domestic targets. Executive chats mocking cleanups. And the final blow, a full audio confession by Thomas Vale and footage of Echo training operatives on American soil. The world reacted like a body in shock. Some denied. Some screamed. But most finally saw it. Claire and Rivera reached the top shaft exit, a maintenance tunnel blown open by Dune's earlier planted charge. They emerged into open night. Snow fell like ash. A convoy of Echo trucks pulled into view. Too late. The compound behind them lit up, flashes of chaos as guards scrambled to salvage what was already gone. Claire turned to Rivera. "We exposed it all. Now what?" He didn't answer, because the sky was filled with helicopters. Military, press, civilian drones. The truth had gone viral. But now came the reckoning. It happened just after sunrise. Thomas Vale was arrested during a closed-door meeting in Virginia. Footage showed agents pulling him from a luxury car, his face stone cold. General Kessler, once untouchable, was placed under federal investigation. His name stripped from the war hero wall in D.C. overnight. The media played Claire's confrontation on a loop. Say that again. He made it impossible. Then this was vengeance. The soundbite became legend. But none of that changed what they'd lost. Dune left that night. No goodbye. Just a message on Claire's encrypted signal. You burned it down. Now build something better. Rivera stayed behind, quieter now, watching Claire from the edge of the warehouse rooftop, where it had all begun. She stood with her father's journal. Open. Wind flipping the pages. "I thought I'd feel something more," she whispered. Rivera lit a cigarette. "You do. You're just too tired to recognize it." She closed the journal, then looked up. The world hadn't healed, but it had changed. And maybe that was enough for now. 2 days later, Claire sat in the back of a congressional hearing room, not as a journalist, not as a whistleblower, but as the daughter of a man whose name had finally been cleared. The chamber was full, camera crews, veterans, politicians suddenly pretending they'd had concerns for years. Everyone wanted a piece of justice now that it was safe to hold. Senators called for investigations, systemic reform, and accountability. The usual. But when they offered Claire a chance to speak, she refused. "I already said everything I needed to," she told the press. Because truth doesn't always belong to microphones. Sometimes it's just a weight you carry and learn to live with. That night, back at Rivera's apartment, she sat on the floor with the last of her father's tapes. The one she hadn't dared play yet. The one marked Personal Claire. She hit play. His voice was softer this time. Tired. Clear. "If I'm gone, it means I couldn't fix this. But you were always brave in a way I wasn't. So if this world still has people like you in it, maybe we've got a chance." She didn't cry. Not this time. She smiled. Despite arrests, headlines, and public outcry, most of Echo Division's inner ring simply vanished. They disappeared from cities, off payrolls, into shadows. Private jets. Remote islands. New aliases. The same power, just rebranded. One report claimed a suspected Echo commander was seen in Jakarta. Another was supposedly killed in a boating accident, body never found. Claire tracked each one. Quietly. She didn't post updates. Didn't leak names. She built a file. Rivera called it paranoia. She called it insurance. "They may come back," she said. "But if they do, I'll be ready." He didn't argue. Because even with Echo burned to the ground, there were embers still glowing. And embers can catch fire. The metal wasn't the point. But it mattered. 2 weeks after the leaks, Colonel James Morgan was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor again. This time, not in a closed military hall, but in front of cameras and thousands of veterans who had believed the lie and now knew better. Claire stood on the stage, holding the medal, the weight of it nothing compared to what she carried in her chest. She didn't make a speech. She didn't need to. But later, in a quiet moment, an old soldier approached her. His hands trembled as he saluted. "Your father saved my squad in '08, he said. "I didn't know they punished him for it. I didn't know what they did." Claire nodded. "You do now?" The man smiled, eyes glassy. "That's enough." And somehow it was. There's a wall in D.C. Few talk about it. Not the one with presidents or fallen heroes. This one is quieter, names that never made the newspapers. Soldiers buried with accusations instead of honors. Men and women labeled as errors, collateral, or simply lost. Claire went alone. No cameras. No headlines. She found her father's name carved gently into the new stone section. No redactions this time. No fake citations. Just Colonel James Morgan, 1971 to 2009 whistleblower. Patriot. Father. She touched the letters with her fingertips, then placed a folded photo at the base. Her and her father on a beach. She was 6. He was laughing. Behind her, someone whispered, "Thank you." She didn't turn around. She just whispered back, "You're welcome." It was raining the night Claire got the envelope. No postage. No return address. Just a clean white slip of paper under her door at 3:12 a.m. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single line, typed in the center, "You didn't finish what you started." No signature. But the weight behind the words said enough. Rivera read the note over her shoulder. Could be a scare tactic. Claire shook her head. No, it's bait. The paper smelled like sulfur, like scorched data drives and cleaned war rooms. A signature sin of Echo's old tricks. Claire poured herself a glass of water, staring out the window. Headlights blurred across wet streets below. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, "They want me to come after them. Or they want you to leave it alone," Rivera offered. Maybe this is their line in the sand. She turned to him. "I steady. They should have sent something stronger." Rivera gave a dry laugh. "You sound like your father." "I hope so," she replied. He wasn't perfect, but he didn't flinch. Rivera reached into his coat and dropped a small box on the table. "Then maybe it's time." Claire opened it. A single USB drive. "Final copy," he said. "Untraceable. Air-gapped. That list of all remaining Echo safe houses? It's on there." Claire stared at it. Not with vengeance. With clarity. "It ends now," she whispered. Claire returned to the attic where it all began. She hadn't stepped into that room since the day she found the floorboard. Since her father's voice cracked through dust and time like a warning bell. She sat cross-legged, surrounded by old boxes and a single tape player humming softly. One tape remained unplayed. Labeled, June 11th, Claire's birthday. She hit play. Her father's voice, younger and lighter, filled the air. "Hey, firecracker. I know I won't always be around to see you grow up. Not the way I want. But if you're hearing this, it means you kept going. It means you fought for something, even if it scared you." Her breath caught in her chest. "When I signed up, I thought I was saving people. It took me too long to realize the fight isn't just out there. Sometimes it's in the halls, the orders, the silence. Sometimes the enemy wears the same uniform." Claire blinked fast, trying to stay composed. "I hope you never forget that you were never the backup plan. You were always the reason I kept going. So if you're out there now, still fighting, know that I was never the hero. But I raised one." The tape clicked to a stop. Claire didn't move. She didn't cry. She placed the tape back in its case, tucked it into her jacket, and stood. There was still one chapter left to write. And she already knew the title. The coordinates led to a farmhouse tucked into the folds of Oregon woods. Isolated. Quiet. Too quiet. Claire stepped out of the car alone. No backup. No broadcast. Just her and the truth. Inside the farmhouse, dust clung to every surface. A radio played static. A kettle whistled even though no one was there to drink. She found him in the back room, the final name. Luther Cade. He wasn't armed. Just old. Hardened. His hands were still stained with ink from black budget paperwork and invisible wars. So, he rasped, not even turning. They finally sent Morgan's daughter. Claire didn't answer. She just stepped closer and dropped the folder onto the table. Inside, every document, every link, every confession. He didn't open it. "You think leaking this stops anything?" "No," Claire said. "I think leaking this proves people like you existed." That made him pause. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She just said, "History forgot my father. And men like you made sure of it. But now, you're the one who gets remembered the way you deserve." Cade gave a dry, bitter chuckle. "I underestimated you." Claire leaned in. Everyone did. She turned to leave. But before walking out, she pulled something from her coat and placed it on the windowsill. Her father's dog tag. He looked at it, and for the first time, his expression cracked. Fear? Regret? Maybe both. Claire stepped into the cold air. And for the first time since the attic, she felt free. 2 weeks later, Claire uploaded her final report. It wasn't just data. It was a story, titled simply, "The Truth My Father Died For." Her voice narrated over footage of memorials, firelit protests, and the names of fallen soldiers finally etched into the light. She didn't dramatize. She didn't beg. She simply asked, "What is a country if those who die for it are erased by those who profit from it?" The screen faded to black. Then her voice returned. "Calmer now. Steady. This isn't just about my father anymore. It's about every voice that's been silenced, every name written in pencil so it could be erased later. Maybe now, we start carving names in stone." She looked straight into the camera. If you watch this all the way through, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Let me see who's still out there listening. She gave a small smile. And if this story moved you, don't forget to hit like. Not for me. For every name they tried to bury. Subscribe so we can keep telling the stories they're afraid of. And if you share this with one person, make sure it's someone who still believes in truth. The screen faded to one last image, a beach, a daughter, a father, laughter frozen in time, then silence, and then nothing, because the story had been told. But the question? That still echoed. What would you do if the truth cost you everything? Let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from? Like, share, and never let the silence win.